Welcome in, everybody, to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. It's my birthday week, so you know what? I'm going to give myself a little bit of a treat this week. We've got a really special show this week that I'm excited about. There's a brand new book out there that I had the privilege of reading. It's called Bigfoot Sightings, True Encounters, The Real Unexplained. True Tales from Across America. It was co-written in kind of a special situation. We have our own paranormal Tupac, if you want to put it that way, in Jim Willis. Jim Willis passed away now. I believe it was, it was almost 2 years ago now. I know it's a year ago now. And it's not like he's got unlimited material out there, like it seems Tupac had out there, but he had a little bit of material out there that needed to be finished. Along comes Michael Kozlowski, who's a very talented author in his own right. You may remember his American Ghost book, and we had him on the show with that book. We'll let Michael tell his part of the story, and we'll bring him on here in just a moment. And the two have come together for this book, Bigfoot Sightings, True Encounters, or the True Tales from Across America. I should say it properly. Bigfoot Sightings, True Tales from Across America is the name of the book. There we go. And I'll tell you, folks, it's an interesting collaboration in styles, and we'll talk about that as well. I truly enjoyed this book. I really do. And, you know, there's a lot of Bigfoot books out there because it is, let's face it, it's a popular subject. It really is. And it's one of those subjects that, you know, is quite popular in itself. So you guys have a hunger for this subject. And it seems like there's 1,000 of these books coming out every day. It takes a really special book to garner my attention. And this is a special book, and it really has garnered my attention. Let me tell you about Michael. Michael Kozlowski lives in Detroit, Michigan with his fiancee, Kristen, and a whole gaggle of animals. And we love animals here on the program as well. I know I've got a whole gaggle of them in my yard as well. He's an engineer, singer-songwriter, an avid golfer, a huge sports fan, especially of his hometown Lions. I'm sorry about that, Michael. We're gonna have to battle twice a year here as a Vikings fan.
That's okay.
It's all right. And loves traveling and exploring. Michael has written a range of books and stories in the horror fiction and paranormal investigation genres, including the first two books in his mystery suspense zombie apocalypse thriller mashup, Angel of Death and Fallen Angel, and Visible Ink Press's American Ghost Stories, an excellent book, which, again, I may even link that back up here in the description of this program, because I want you guys to check out American Ghost Stories again as well. Let's bring him in, and then we'll talk about Jim's pedigree as well. Michael Kozlowski, thank you so much for being back with us here on Darkness Radio. It's appreciated.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate being here again.
So tell us a little bit. I want you to tell the story of how this comes across your desk here, because Jim's death was a sudden one. At least it was sudden to me. I think it was maybe a couple of months after I had talked to him that I found out he passed away.
Yeah, and I didn't know Jim, very well. I knew him a little bit through his writing and mostly through, kind of using his books in some of my own research, that stuff I was working on. But we were both authors for Visible Ink Press, who's published this book and the Ghost Stories book. And I was at the time working on my next book for Visible Ink, which was more of a mysteries unexplained sort of thing. And I was actually in the gym, and the publisher gave me a call and said, "Hey, what do you think about, this idea of a Bigfoot book?" And I'm like, "Man, you bugged me about Bigfoot books before, I don't know." And he's like, "Well, it's kind of a special thing, And then he told me about Jim, which you're right, it was a shock. I don't think anybody that I know of, saw it coming, but he wanted to get the book finished. His family wanted it finished. I think that's just kind of the guy Jim is. It's the kind of guy I am. You just don't want things hanging,
Mhm.
And they asked me about, picking up where he'd left off, and I was humbled and honored, that they trusted me with it. So, they sent over the draft and the notes, and away we went. So
What was amazing, and I guess I'll wrap this part of what I wanted to talk about Jim was even in that last conversation I had with him. Boy, he was prolific up until the point, that last point where I talked to him, where he talked about how many different things he had in the hopper. His mind was always going. He was always talking about, oh, I got 14 different things on my mind, and I probably got six of them that I want to put on paper, and two of them are already on paper, three of them are already on paper, right? So, the ideas were always going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I said to him, I think in one of the boy, I think I even replayed it here on the show. It was he had this really great quote about life, and I had asked him about believers and skeptics and wanting to believe in the other side, I think was the quote. And what do you say to somebody who doesn't believe in the afterlife, or somebody who's having a hard time believing in the afterlife? And he had this beautiful quote, and I played it on our anniversary show, because it just kind of hit home, right? And he had this towards the end of his life. He had this outlook on belief and magic, and really, you would think it was kind of one of those almost childlike wonder like open looks at the universe, like anything was possible, right? um
Right.
and to have gone through all those experiences and to think, well, anything is possible. Normally, as I would think, as we age, you'd close down. You'd just be like, well, screw this. Life is too hard as it is, and everybody's, pardon my language here, Mike. Everyone's full of shit, and
Yeah.
and I'm tired of this, and I'm going to close down, and the hell with all of you. Um, but he wasn't. He was incredibly open to a lot of different things, and incredibly open to people's opinions, incredibly open to the way the universe worked, and he wasn't stuck to one theory, or stuck to one outlook, or stuck to one opinion on things. And I think that's, and even Alexa here has an opinion about Jim. So that was very weird. Um, so I think that's what I found so wonderful about him. What was so wonderful about having him on as a guest, because you could take him anywhere, right? Um,
Yeah, I really think him, and probably all the interests and all the things he's writing about and all the different, like you said, his mind's going a mile a minute, and he was open. And I think the more you investigate that kind of stuff as he did, the more, myself included, even though I'm more on the skeptical side, the more I go, maybe, and the more you don't know as well, so to kind of pigeonhole yourself into a position that this is what I believe. The more you're open to exploring the other things, the more you realize, I might not be so solid in that belief. That might not, this one sounds pretty good too, or that one sounds interesting as well. And just being open to that and being, free to that, I think is important, and it comes kind of with the territory.
so with that in mind, let me throw you in this direction then, Mike, because here's a man who is wide open, and he's tackling the subject of Bigfoot, which is a pretty wide open subject, right? You have people believing, you have apers who believe that this is an organic creature. You have people who believe that maybe it's a extraterrestrial creature. It may be hooked up with extraterrestrials, or it may be a dimensional creature that is traveling different dimensions. There are a lot of wild theories about this creature, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got Jim, who's sitting down, and he may believe it all, right?
Right.
He's going to take this big, wide, expansive creature, and he's going to try and throw it into a book. And then he passes away, and your publisher goes, "All right, optimistic skeptic, here it is," right? And you two don't exactly have the same outlook, but but yet, you're going to sit down and you're going to collab, right? Even
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
other side. So,
Right.
what kind of mindset do you have to put yourself in order to try to make this fit? Are you shoehorning, or are you opening yourself up to try to fit Jim? How do you attack this?
I think it's a little of both. There were large sections of the book that I didn't even touch. They were done and finished, and copy and paste. That's all I had to do. Um, I had to read them to know where we were going, of course. And a lot of times I was reading, I was going, "Oh man," it was fun being a reader and a writer at the same time. Kind of learning as I went and opening up my mind. With it was almost like having a debate as I was writing sometimes. Now in a lot of cases we were on the same page. No pun intended. Um, but in a lot of instances, there would be something, and it made it difficult at times because he might have written part of a chapter, and I'm kind of finishing it up or cleaning it up, or he had just some points for a chapter, and I'm writing it out, and it's like, well, I don't really believe the way he's saying it, but I don't want to not put it in there. So it had to be almost more hands off. Like you had to take your own opinion out of it even more, because I'm not only writing for myself, I'm writing for Jim. So,
Yeah.
I had to be really broad on my opinion. And I'm a pretty wide open person anyway, although I'm a skeptic. I absolutely want to believe. I love the idea of magic in the world and, mystery and all that stuff, it's what makes the place interesting. So the more crazy shit out there, the more stuff I get to write about, right? But,
Oh, yeah, very true.
but but at the same time, I have a very pragmatic side. I'm an engineer by day. I like facts and numbers and things like that. So, it's like, okay, I'll listen to you and I'll entertain your idea, but please prove it to me. Not, I'm not telling you I don't believe you and get out of here. Please bring me the information and convince me. So. Yeah, it was an interesting collaboration. And there were certainly times when I was writing, my opinions of afterlife and ghosts and everything else aside, that it felt like Jim was sitting right there next to me and helping out. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. And I can definitely tell, there's that this book was really written seamlessly. I mean, that it wasn't, there wasn't a tug of war, there wasn't a back and forth, there wasn't a this is my part of the book, this is his part of the book. That really the two of you got along famously as you wrote the book. So
Yeah, it
it
felt like it. Sure
it
did.
really felt like one voice. It didn't feel like the two of you had a tug of war over who believed what.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad. I'm really glad to hear that because it was not a struggle. I mean, we did have a very similar writing style. I think we put a lot of our own personality into our writing. I don't think our personalities were that different. I have a million hobbies as well.
Mhm.
So that part of it was easy. But like I said, when you're trying to not put words in somebody else's mouth while you're writing, it gets to be a little tough. But the more
Well,
that the more that I hear that you can't tell necessarily. I mean, there's certain parts of the book where it's like, this is Jim, right? Like in the prefaces and in the conclusions, because I wanted to make sure his opinion, unfiltered, was given, right? And
mhm.
as much as possible. But all the rest of the book, the idea that you can't tell who it is makes me very happy.
Most definitely. And I think also it's that love of the subject and
Yeah.
the love of the wonderment of what this really is, I think is what unites both of you. And that voice also comes out on the page as well. I think that does as well. Um, I want to bring out your skeptical side here for a moment,
All right, have
actually
it.
before we hit the break here, and I want to bring it out on one of the most famous Bigfoot cases. Let's just hit the meat and potatoes right away here, Mike. The Patterson-Gimlin film
Yes.
and the Patterson-Gimlin case, because this is so wide ranging. But I figure we can probably take a good 7 to 10 minutes here, and
Sure.
we can get into it because it's one of those that you know as you start to break down the little intricacies and the little minutia of this case, it seems like there are little bits and pieces and story changes in it that make you think, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it is a hoax, maybe it's the truth. But all along, there's one person who sticks to their story and says it's the truth. And then there are other ancillary characters in there who say, well, no, it's got to be faked or it could be faked or it should be faked. Coming from an engineer standpoint, when you see it and I know you've seen the clip and I know you've done the research, where do you weigh in on this whole thing?
Well, it's a tough one for sure. And I mean, I think obviously, what are we, some 60 odd years since, right? The film came out, and still there's nobody who's, absolutely disproved it. There's nobody who's absolutely proved it. It's still one of those maybe, maybe not. So, far be it from me to be the end all answer, but um, I lean toward that it's manufactured.
Okay.
Um, there's, research that the film's been enhanced and certain biologists are looking at it and they can see muscle movement or this or that. And I mean, I haven't seen good proof of that. It's things I haven't seen a video that I looked at and went, oh yeah, I can really see the tricep moving as or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so there's some out there that, are saying, yeah, this isn't fake. You can't see zippers, you can't see that, but it's a poor quality film. In the end, and what enhancement makes it better and how well you can enhance it. You may never be able to say one way or the other. Um, I think a lot of the information leading up to the film is what makes me more so than the film itself question its validity. The fact that he was going out there to film a Bigfoot film, right? Like not looking for Bigfoot necessarily, although, he knew Bigfoot had been in the area. I believe it was Jim Bryan that directed him to the area, Bluff Creek area in the first place, because they had found footprints previously. And, going out there kind of making what you might call a mockumentary today, right? Like, he's pretending to be led by Indian guides and all this other, so presumably the climax of the film would be coming across a Bigfoot,
Right.
right? So, is there a costume set and waiting? And then they do the film, they're like, man, that looks really good. We could probably say that's just really Bigfoot, right? That's obviously the skepticism in me, right? But that sort of information that kind of led up to the film gives me more doubt than the film itself, I think.
Years ago, and I unfortunately I don't remember what episode it was in. We had the guy on who claims he sold the suit to them, or the
Right.
$1,000. I think he claimed
Something, yeah.
sold the suit for. Although he claims he couldn't find the receipt and he didn't have any documentation for it, but he knows who he sold the suit to, and he had all that information. Um, it to me it wasn't all that compelling of an interview. It maybe lasted 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
the suit itself, like, let's say somebody sold him the suit. It's not like it's just a monkey suit, right? Like, it's not just a
right,
gorilla suit, right? It's unique.
right.
So, you
And
know,
he was trying to, much like, and I don't want to spoil much out of the book, but much like you were pointing out in the book, it was about a year before the Planet of the Apes movie. And he was saying it wasn't just a suit. It was very much state of the art. And it
right.
was, it wasn't just an average suit that you would get at a costume shop, that it very much, there was a lot of work that was put in
Yeah.
to make it look quite realistic. I don't know that that interview swayed me though.
Right.
I fall kind of in a camp where I don't know what to believe with Patterson Gimlin.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a point in the film when you watch more than just the famous couple of seconds that everyone shows on television.
Sure. The frame 342, I think, if I'm
Yeah,
remembering correctly,
yeah,
the patty, right?
yeah, yep, yep. Just that, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, when you watch more the gate, it does look a little more like it could be a human in a suit.
Yeah.
When you start to watch more of the walk, but then when you just see little bits of it, you go, "Oh, okay, that doesn't look like it could. It looks like
Yeah.
it could be an animal, not a human."
And the
Uh,
thing with Patterson as well, and I think there's, I've seen some other videos that are, I would say, as convincing, maybe not as close up, and certainly not as famous. But the thing with Patterson himself in his own history is that he was always sort of trying to be famous, right? He was always looking for some way, not necessarily Bigfoot, right, but just something like almost, like the guy looking for that one big sale,
yeah,
so that also, just from a deeper research point, rather than just saying, "Oh, here's the film. What do you think?" And
right.
and that leads back to we talked about a little bit earlier before we went on, you know, researching deeper into things than just here's what we have today. What do you think? You
And it's the jealousies too between Patterson and Gimlin that seem to me like it,
Right.
the amount of talk between the players involved in this film that make me think that something more is going on here.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
this
you would think everybody'd come running. It's real, it's real, it's real. Everybody that was a part of it, right?
right.
With no questions and not even, well, I'm just not going to talk about it, or whatever for a while,
Yeah. It seems to me that it seems like there's more than if it would have been a genuine, we're out there, we're filming nature, and all of a sudden something happens. But like you said, they set it up like a mockumentary,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden they found something.
Yeah, just
No.
yeah, and I mean, I've mentioned this. I don't know if I said it specifically in the book, but I feel like the more that people go looking for Bigfoot, right, the more that somebody's involved with actually going, this is my plan, I'm going to go find Bigfoot, the less likely they are to see a Bigfoot, right?
Mhm.
A
Mhm.
Sasquatch. It's always a surprise. It's, somebody out camping or, a Boy Scout troop sees it up on the hill or whatever the case may be. The probably the four men that spent, the greatest part of their lives researching Bigfoot, the four horsemen of the Sasquatch, right? Deheaton and Byrne and Krantz and Grover. Grover Krantz, would say his name twice. Anyway, all four of them at the end, said, yeah, I've never seen one though. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of things that and they all four firmly believe in its existence, but never seen one. And, I mean, these guys did, exhibitions in Everest, some of them, and then, uh, Byrne did like a 5 year thing in the 90s. All he did was go look for Bigfoot, in all these areas where people have seen him, supposedly seen the creature. So, just to, like you said, just to go out there and, oh, I'm going to go film a Bigfoot film. And hey, I happen to got Bigfoot on there as well. What a great cameo. Like it's a little far-fetched sometimes. Yeah.
There was a video recently. I want to say it's within the last couple of years that kind of, to me, it kind of, with technology. I don't know that technology is necessarily a good thing now, Mike. Because if I remember the video right, it was someone walking through the woods, and it was almost like a back shot of Bigfoot. It's almost like they came up upon Bigfoot, and it
Okay.
was almost like Bigfoot turned around, like, and then all of a sudden the video cuts off, right? But it was almost like Bigfoot was just sitting there, like,
Yeah, I think I've seen that one
yeah,
actually, kind of behind the bush.
yeah, behind the bush, yeah,
Yeah.
like they almost happened upon it,
Yeah.
right? And it was clear as day, and
Yeah.
it's almost like, okay, you can almost tell that this is AI, but not quite, and you're
Yeah.
such a state of disbelief as you're watching this video that you're like, it's got to be fake. You
All
just,
right.
there's,
And we're such a weird place right now. I mean, you mentioned AI, and the first thought is we have this technology, our cameras are so much better, our film was so much better. We have drones that can fly over, all this stuff, right? We should be able to get a picture of it. So if you see something, wow, it's much more, it's not that much of a surprise. We got all this stuff now. We get trail cameras, and how can we not get a video or a picture of it? But then also you have AI. So even if you do get a picture or a video of it, how likely how much credence can you give it?
or even
That's the tough part right now.
even the one from a year, what was it, a year ago, where the Sasquatch is standing out in the middle of a butte or in the middle of the
Mm,
desert, and it
right.
looks like it's being shot from a helicopter or a drone, where it's just standing out in the middle of nowhere, like it's
Right.
roaming, and people are like, come on, how is this not AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're getting to the point now, Mike. It seems like we can't believe our own video eyes, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people say it, and it comes up in the book, what's it going to take to get people to believe in Bigfoot? I mean, some just under 30% of people, I believe, in the US and broadly in the world believe Bigfoot exists. I mean, that's a pretty big number. Somebody said to me, "Oh, well, it's not 30%. That's not very much." I'm like, 30% is a huge number. Like that's to believe in something that you have no proof for, really, right? Outside of religion, I can't think of anything bigger. But the proof, like, what will it take to really convince the skeptics? I think it's got to be a body or some really significant DNA, it's got to be something, tangible. Because like you said, you can't believe a picture necessarily. You can't believe a video necessarily. How do you prove that that video is real? Or, you know, it's yeah, it's a tough one.
But then, okay, so then, uh, I almost I want you to hold that thought. I want to take our break and then I want to come back because there's some dangerous things about saying, but then we need a body.
I
And
know.
I want you to hold on to that here, Mike, for a second, because I want to ask
I'm
the
not saying we did. I'm not necessarily advocating.
no, 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 because I want to bring up somebody who's on the other side of that, on the other side of that argument, and we'll talk about that when we come back. And I also want to talk about uh, some people who have taken it one step further, people who have hoaxed bodies. And I also want to talk about people who have tried to make it into a game show. So
Okay.
let's talk about that when we come back, Mike, because it's people have, I think, taken that to extremes. And it seems like for some reason that idea has been played and bandied about, and we still don't even take that seriously. I
Right.
it, it's almost like there's
Have a good example of that, but I'll hold it. I'll hold
yeah,
it.
it seems like there's a profit and comedy at the same time being thrown
Mhm.
out when it even comes to that subject. The book is a good one, folks, and we have a link in the description of this program so you can go get it. Bigfoot Sightings, True Tales from Across America. It is Jim Willis with Michael A. Kozlowski. Michael is with us right now, and we're talking about that book. Folks, go get this book. It is absolutely wonderful and available right now. When we come back, are we playing around with the idea that we need a body in order to prove that Bigfoot is out there? We'll talk to Mike about it when we come back next on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is Michael A. Kozlowski. He is the co-author of Bigfoot Sightings, True Tales from Across America. Of course, the other co-author is the dearly departed Jim Willis. Okay, Mike, before the break, we were talking about whether we need a body or not to prove the existence of Bigfoot. Now, we've had DNA samples. They always come up as something else: a deer, a wolf, a bear. We've had scat, comes up the same thing. It's always something inconclusive, right? And the logical conclusion, of course, is, well, we need a skeleton. We need something. We need a body. We need something to be able to say, here it is. But then in the last decade, we've had people put a ghillie suit in a freezer and take it around the country and say, hey, I got a body. Here it is. I'm going to take it on tour. Come buy tickets. Um, we've had people start up a game show and say, we'll give you so much money if you can go out there and kill a Bigfoot and bring it back.
Right.
Um, and there's a gentleman who's in this book by the name of Todd Standing, who has tried to make Bigfoot an endangered species and say, no, 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 no. You shouldn't be out there trying to hunt this creature. This creature is probably more human than it is a creature. And to kill it is unethical. So let's sort this out for a minute. First of all, I want to ask you this question, Mike. Are we not taking this serious enough? Has this actually become more comedy than anything else? Because every time somebody says, well, you know what, Alabama's going to open up, Bigfoot hunting for sport, you get the wah, 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 wah on the nightly news, and it becomes a kicker for the nightly news. Are
Yeah.
we taking it too light?
Yeah. But possibly, probably most people are. I guess then I guess it depends on, where we end up at the end, right? If there's no such thing, then we're not taking it too light, but if there is, then yeah, certainly. So I think there's very few people, even early when arguably people would be more likely to believe in Bigfoot. I think there's just not many serious investigations going on, using the scientific methods. And, we've got a couple professors, a couple, Jeff Meldrum, of course, famous. We had Grover Krantz and, people who give it a bit more credibility, but they're few and far between. And I think, especially in this age of reality TV and, shows on A&E and Discovery and whatever else, not to disparage those shows, but they're just, they kind of, whether they're serious or not, they fall into that same sort of category as the ones that aren't so serious, just by way of how they're made or developed and presented. So I think, we're even maybe more likely than not to, than before to take it less serious because of those things. Um, but it's hard also to take it serious when, you mentioned Todd Standing, who, claims to be able to pretty much walk out in the woods and see a Bigfoot whenever he wants. And
Yeah.
take people with him, right? And he's, oh, I've showed all these people, and all this. And well, if that's the case, there should be, a lot more great photos or videos or whatever that you're bringing back to us. There's people who've, claim they've become friends with these creatures and interacted with them. If you're that friendly, you can't get a, little tuft of hair, that gives us a real DNA sample or something, right? So, um, a lot of the claims are so dramatic that then not to be able to develop proof from those claims is really cast doubt on them, right? So it's kind of a six of one, half a dozen of the other.
Right. Right. So to backtrack a little, what in your mind would constitute a serious Bigfoot show? Like if a network were going to build one, what?
I don't know that a show does it justice. Like I think if you had a serious sort of investigative show,
Yeah.
uh I don't even know where that would air or if it would be interesting. I mean, obviously the shows that are on are cut and edited and every show we're just seconds away from discovering
Right. Right.
it's right around the corner. Um, you know, but I think like the Oak Island show, I think does a good job of for what it does because it's very um specific in how it's going about thing, right? Like it doesn't hide its failures. It doesn't it's like, oh, we thought this was what it was, and it's it turns out it's a spoon from somebody's lunch that was here or something, whatever.
Right.
Um, you know, but I think the other shows, they don't do that because they don't want to obviously lose viewership. I think you'd really have to. I don't know that it would be a very interesting show 99% of the time. Yeah.
You hit on something there. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about Chip Coffee had put out our friend Chip Coffee had put on a post that about something that I had been clamoring about for months about paranormal TV, and he hit it right on the head. And I don't think a lot of people in the paranormal had. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, Mike, and then I'll throw it back to you.
Knock yourself out.
Well, we'll see how if you agree on this or not.
All right.
And he had talked about the death of paranormal TV, ghost hunting TV, and basically it was just saying that he was just arguing that the ratings weren't there, that the networks basically had taken those shows off the table because they weren't making money, and essentially that's why it was. People don't understand that if these shows don't have a certain amount of viewers, then the advertisers don't come in. They take those shows off the table because something else will come in that will make that money, right? Which is not a big secret. Now, a lot of us who are in the industry know exactly how many viewers those shows were getting. They know exactly how many dollars were coming in without boring everybody who's listening to the show right now or watching the show on video. And a show pretty much has to pull in at least 500,000 viewers per episode. They have to average that in order to stay on the air. A lot of those shows weren't averaging that, right? So they take them off the table. Well, people go, but I watched. Yeah, but you probably put it on your DVR and you wanted to binge watch it. So,
Right.
you stacked all of them on your DVR. You didn't bother to get back to them. It didn't count towards their rating.
Yeah. He waited till it streamed on Netflix,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. You waited and you blew their rating and they didn't get credit for the show and they went the way of the dodo. And that was the end of it. The other part of it is this, and this is the other thing I contend, and it's going to hurt when I say this. I'm sorry, but some of those shows were just too boring for TV.
Yeah.
They were too sciencey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking just as you're spitballing here, and thinking about Netflix and streaming, that may be the place where a show like that could work,
Yeah.
where you can spend your production time, ahead of the game, and then, put your thing together and have some real science behind it, and but you don't have to do it in the moment. Um, so much, because you have a year from now, we're going to put out 6 episodes of a limited series of, Bigfoot investigation or something. That maybe
Well,
that's a venue that could work.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
and I don't know that it should be a show. I mean, if we're talking serious scientific investigations and whatnot, I mean, you need to have some money behind it. You need to have some, whether if it's private donations or whatever, or you need some kind of, government funding, which, may be happening. You know, we can do a little bit of conspiracy theory behind that. But uh, that's the only way it's going to go. I mean, the guys we mentioned like Meldrum and Krantz, they're kind of pariahs in their field, even though they're respected scientists otherwise. But because they're interested in Bigfoot or Sasquatch, they're kind of like, these guys are, yeah, they're not serious. But if real money went to them, guys that have that much passion for the truth, or whatever it may be, I'm confident. Well, maybe not confident in those guys. I'm confident in good scientists would
right.
be able to say, look, we thought it was this, and instead of spinning it so it still seems plausible and maybe and blah blah blah, just says, no, we were wrong. Okay, that's not it, it's something else. But
Mhm.
that doesn't bring in ratings, like you said. So that's why I don't know why I don't know that it works as a show.
To kind of wrap up the point, and then I'll bring it back around to Bigfoot and why certain things work and certain things don't. Um, a lot of people get on Zach Baggins and Ghost Adventures, and they're like, "Well, they're still around." Well, yeah, they're still around because there's still, let's face it, there's still a certain amount of theatrics there, and America wants to see theatrics, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to see people running around in the dark with a gadget in their hand
Right.
that they don't understand. They don't understand the science behind a gadget or what you're using for a gadget. They don't want to know what these 18 pieces of equipment are that you're using. Uh, they want to be scared out of their wits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not scaring them out of their wits. You're telling them what the equipment does, and they don't care.
Yeah.
So that ends your paranormal show right there. If you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, well, they don't want to watch it,
Yeah.
and they want to see scary
You
stuff.
know, I it was a an entirely different conversation, but it applies that I brought up a point on something and I said, our generation now, especially the generation behind us Gen Xers, has been raised on reality TV and, mega movies and all this stuff. They demand a climax, right?
Yes.
If
Yeah.
if you don't give them a climax, you're talking, these are people who were burned on Lost, right? They were,
Yep.
it's like I'm not having that. They weren't happy with how Game of Thrones ended. No way, man. If you're not giving me a Bigfoot within the first season, then forget you. I'm not watching anymore.
Yep.
Call me when you got a Bigfoot to show me.
Yeah. People hated the Sopranos ending. I mean,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's,
like
it's,
we're in a, we want our climax. I've
exactly.
invested, damn it.
Yeah. So so how do we bring this around to a Bigfoot show? Well, again, you want a Bigfoot show where that's going to draw you one have to have researchers with personality, right?
Yeah.
Kind of maybe they got to be a little dumber, maybe they got to be running around the woods with some personality, maybe they got to be doing some things that are unconventional, who knows. But second, like you just said, Mike, they got to be finding some stuff out there,
Yeah.
and they got to find something substantial. That's the only other thing that's going to draw on TV, because
Yeah.
otherwise these shows are going to go the way of the dodo too.
And if somebody does find something substantial, it's going to be out there before there's time to make a TV show about it.
Right.
unless it happens in the moment, right? So it's a catch 22. You have the show that you're looking for it, but if you never find it, you get canceled, or if you go out there and find it beforehand, nobody's gonna make the show. We're just going, we found Bigfoot. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that I was surprised about when it came to, was it I think it was Josh Gates. It had nothing to do with Bigfoot, but it had to do with one of his recent discoveries. He announced it before the show came out. And I
Mm,
don't remember what it was that he discovered. Somebody will remind me by email, I'm sure. But he discovered something and he released it by press release and said, "Hey, we discovered this. Be sure to watch
yeah.
this episode," because he knew it would get out. So
Right.
he cut it off at the pass and said, "Hey, guess what? We discovered this. You can watch it on this episode."
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's almost going to have to come to that.
Yeah. I think it all took a turn with Geraldo's vault.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
That's right. That's
Right.
where we decided that if you're not going to give me the payoff, I'm not watching.
That's right. That's right. That's where it all does take a turn. That's right. I want to switch gears on you a little bit here. I want to get into minutia here because you did something in this book that I completely agree with. Most people are going to disagree with me about. You're going to love it when I bring this up, Mike.
Okay.
Um, in the beginning of the book, you said, "I don't quite know how to address this, but this is how I'm going to address this." Some people say big feet. I'm going to say Bigfoot. It is Bigfoot. Much like you don't say deers, it's deer.
Yes.
I completely agree with you, my friend. Why are people saying big feet?
I
It
don't know.
drives me
I
nuts.
have a friend that we said we were going to popular. We were talking about this while I was writing the book at a Christmas party. Actually, I had finished the book. It was in editing, but we were talking about it, and I was telling him about the book, and he's like, "Well, what, big feet, Bigfoot, blah blah blah. What do you call the little ones? Are they little big feet?" So we're gonna popularize little big feet around the world now. But yeah. I don't know. Bigfoot's a weird name anyway, right?
It
I
is.
like I'll usually go with Sasquatch if I'm trying to have a very serious conversation, but um not that these conversations aren't serious, but Bigfoot's the nomenclature. It's what people are used to and know. And sometimes I don't know. I think if I go with Sasquatch, then I sound pretentious. So, but yeah, it can't be Bigfoots. That sounds ridiculous. It can't be, but yeah, I go with Bigfoot. That's the plural, just like deer.
Right. Yeah. Deer are deer. They're not deers. If you were to
Yeah,
say,
I
"Oh,
mean now a cow is cows, but
right,
so
cow and cows, right? That's proper. But deer and deers is not. And I consider
right.
deer and deers and Bigfoot to be the same,
I
right?
agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just I want us to be on that page and people to get on our page and not be
yeah.
saying big feet.
We'll probably hear lots of crap about this.
I'm sure it's gonna be the number one reason why people tune into this video and start commenting. They're gonna be, "It's big feet, it's big feet." It's not, people, trust me. The other thing that will get people up and moving on this video is going to be this. They're gonna argue as to whether this is an ape we're dealing with or a supernatural being with magical abilities. And no matter where you go, no matter if you walk into a convention, no matter if you walk into a discussion, um, or if you're just talking amongst friends, it's one camp or the other. It doesn't seem like people can settle one way or another. Now, I think I know where you fall on this. Tell me why you fall where you fall on it.
Well, I definitely fall on the organic being side, rather than the mystical and magical. Mostly because I'm a skeptic by nature, and if I'm gonna, my default is to lean that way anyway. I think based on probable or plausible evolution that could have led to Bigfoot existing. It probably is either something descended like from Denisovans or Neanderthals or some other, humanoid being, right, that came up with Homo sapiens, or it's an evolving ape. I mean, apes are really smart, right? The ones we know about, and they do sign language. They're very close to being us. No reason there can't be one that's even just a bit smarter, even more, kind of that missing. I wouldn't say missing link because I don't think evolutionally that's how that works, but it could be a branch that's in between, right? On the ladder, that's kind of where I fall. Partially also, I think, it's hard enough to prove Bigfoot. Do we need to prove Bigfoot and aliens and other dimensions all at the same time? I mean, like, we don't need to pile on. Let's one at a time. And I think the interdimensional, multiverse, alien connection kind of stuff is pretty new. And I think mostly the reasoning behind it that I've seen in my research and is usually it's the ghost in the machine, right? It's trying to prove something that I don't have an answer for, so alien, right? It's sort of like religion. You're like, I don't know why the sun rises, so it must be Odin pushing up, whatever. Thor's throwing lightning bolts. It's they don't have an answer. They come up with something fantastical.
I don't know. I wasn't going to push it to this point until
I
a
know
little
that I probably
later,
just made
but
so many people mad.
but Ronnie LeBlanc, who you mentioned in the book, especially as part of exhibition Bigfoot, but he he's been on the show once or twice, and he's got the Monsterland books out there. You mentioned that as well as a book in the book. Part of the Monsterland book is making that connection between Bigfoot and UFOs and these glowing orbs or these balls of light.
Mm.
And he talks about this phenomena a lot. You see Bigfoot look up in the sky, boom, there's UFO. He like they're joined at the hip, right?
I don't see it a lot from other witnesses, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
So if only one person's telling me that every time they see a Bigfoot, they see a UFO, well, how many Bigfoots are you seeing along with your UFOs? But um, I just don't. I believe in extraterrestrial life. I believe more than I don't that aliens exist.
Okay.
And that's just from sort of a, you know, odds position and the scope of the universe and whatever. It seems very unlikely it's just us. Um, I don't know that they visited. I don't think that they're connected to Bigfoot. I don't think ghosts are connected to aliens or ghosts are connected to Bigfoot or, I think they're all plausible things. I just don't see the overlap in them.
I've heard the argument for if these are supernatural beings and they travel between dimensions, what they do with the bodies when they die, or what they do as
Yeah.
far as, where they stay, all this other stuff. Tell me, as a terrestrial being, as a being that's on this planet, what do you believe they do with their bodies when they die?
They could be smart enough, intelligent enough to bury them and have some sort of, end of life ceremony type thing that either disposes of the body or hides it well. Um, I don't know that they have to. And here's where I'll argue a bit from the other side, right? There's something called a minimal viable population theory, which says basically you need about 50 individuals for genetic diversity and about 500 to kind of keep everything going. So that's a pretty small population required. And that's assuming genetics that we know. So, we don't know anything about Bigfoot's genetics. It could be, I put out in the book, there could just be at any given time 2 to 4 living creatures. They're always fertile. They can have what we might consider incestual relationships, but with no damage. Genetically, there doesn't harm them to mate in close relationship to relatives or whatever. But even just assuming the 5,500 number, that's a very small amount of creatures in a very large amount of space, right? So to find a body could be like a needle in a haystack. I mean, we don't I don't, I'm in the woods a lot. I'm a hunter, deer mostly hunting in Michigan. My brother hunts all over the place. He's up in Alaska. He's got property, whatever. You don't trip over dead animals all the time. Like once in a while I've come across a deer carcass and I mean, more deer, they're like rats up where we hunt. They're everywhere. But I'm not finding them laying all over the place, even though I know a number of them have died, either they've been eaten or disposed of or whatever. So if you take an even smaller population of creature, to think that we're going to just stumble across a dead one, um, probably pretty unlikely.
There's a new movie out currently from Small Town Monsters, and it's called the Monster on Morris Mountain. It was put together by Hellbent Holler, and there's a new theory now, which I think will blow people's mind if they think that Bigfoot is a transdimensional creature. And what they show is that as they're going out into these, they're in North Carolina, and as they're going out into the woods in the Uwharrie Mountains, you see these logs that are stacked like this, and they say we think we're in a killing ground because underneath these logs, you see the bones of these different animals. And what it looks like is these animals have been thrown under these logs, and the tracker, who's former military, who's with them, goes, "Yeah, the reason is this," and he pulls out one of these logs and he says, "You see underneath this log, there's this like fungus, and this fungus helps decay bones and decay flesh. It helps rapid decay, basically."
Yeah,
So he said, anything that's stuffing these dead animals under these logs knows that it helps decay basically a carcass faster.
right.
So something intelligent is throwing its discarded
Yeah,
food under this, knowing that it's getting rid of something faster. So it could answer two things. One, whatever's getting rid of its garbage or refuse is doing it under these logs. And two, maybe that's how Bigfoot gets rid of its carcasses, is it
right.
has it has these stacked logs somewhere. Maybe it's throwing its bodies under there, and that's how they get rid of their remains.
Yeah, I wouldn't discount that at all. Like I said, I think they're an intelligent enough creature, assuming they're alive, that they, could have burial rights. And I mean, we see a lot of elephants and things that do, that have kind of end of life rights, of their own that, you know, we know elephants are smart, but we don't think they're as smart as people, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
know they're an animal, but they
Right.
still do these, instinctual things that, over millennia, they learn to do for whatever reason that, no reason that Bigfoot didn't learn, just on instinct to, hide its bodies or whatever.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same thing as, you've never seen people say, well, you've never seen a dead Sasquatch. Well, I have trained chipmunks. I've never seen my chipmunk die and go, and see
Right.
a chipmunk carcass either. I mean, I've never seen the carcass of my dead chipmunks either.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I don't think my chipmunk is Bigfoot either. So
Now, like we were saying earlier, if you find one, there's the proof that you really need, and that's why people, oh, I've never seen one. Proofs.
yeah,
That's what it all comes down to in the end.
yeah, very much so. Very much so. One of the things that you have in the book here, which is interesting, is you've got the different uh, Native American stories of Sasquatch, and they're all very interesting. But one of the things that's really interesting is how Sasquatch ties into wildlife and the different stories of how it knows. Even though we've talked about the fact that maybe it's not such a mystical creature, it does talk about the mystical side of it. And even so much as one of the more interesting stories in the book was this, Mike. The one that grabbed me was there, and I don't remember, forgive me, I don't remember where the town was, but it was so much as Bigfoot was hanging around a house, and a boyfriend or a husband had shown up, and he didn't like, or the Bigfoot didn't like the fact that he had shown up. So it had acted out towards the fact that he was there.
Right.
Like,
Just being like very territorial. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
territorial, like, hey, get that guy out of there.
Yeah.
I don't like him. But the fact that, Bigfoot was reacting towards, would accept you for the fact that you were respectful to the land, to the animals, would accept you if you were good to the land and would sure as heck come after you if you weren't.
Right. Yeah.
And now, is that to you? I could kind of tell, knowing Jim. I guess knowing Jim, I could see to him that would be more of a spiritual thing. To you, is that a natural thing or is that a
I think
spiritual?
it could be just more of a natural territorial thing. Even as much as having a feeling about somebody or whether it's something from observation or just he's come great. We all have that, right? You meet somebody and you're like, "Oh, I like that guy, he gives off a weird vibe." And I think in animals, and we'll say Bigfoot's a little more in touch with its animal nature, depending on how you view what the creature is. I think they have more of that instinct. My dogs know when somebody's not cool. you know
Yeah.
right. So there's that, and then with the Native American stuff, I think they're so in tune with the land, that they're in tune with creatures as well. And I think to think that Bigfoot is in the same way sort of a protector of the land, of the area, maybe of the people. You know, I don't think that requires magic or mysticism. I think that a lot of the Native American lore will overlap, as all of our myths and legends tend to do. Where there's some stories where Bigfoot's kind of like a skinwalker. There's some stories where like a Wendigo or something like that. But then there's other stories where no, these are very separate beings. So. Um, there's a little bit of both in it, but I think to believe that it's just an organic creature that, is protective of its area. I tend to think, if I'm believing that Bigfoot lives, that they're pretty solitary.
Yeah.
Maybe in small family groups occasionally.
Okay.
My opinion is they probably are on their own most of the time and maybe, migrate certain areas that they travel, probably come together to mate, that sort of thing. I think it's more of an animal sort of behavior like that, which would explain also why they're not, you're not just running into villages of Bigfoot, right?
Right.
They're just out there doing their thing on their own and probably have a territory that they would protect. Now, some stories like the Ape Canyon story, very famous, one of the first, Bigfoot encounters. It's a whole clan of them that attack these miners and throw boulders at them and stuff like that. So obviously there's stories that they're living in bigger groups, and maybe some do, maybe some don't. Maybe it's a bit of a mix. But yeah, I think they would tend to be territorial beings, but I think they cover a lot of territory.
We're always told, oh, never feed a Bigfoot, right? Or never, if there's one in your yard, never start feeding them because they'll always expect that you're gonna keep feeding them, right? And the minute you don't feed them, they're gonna get mean. Um,
Hmm.
don't you think there's intent there?
I think, yeah, hmm. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would be feeding a Bigfoot anyway to bring to my house. I guess I'd have to see what it was like. If it was like a Harry and Henderson situation, yeah, come on. But if it was something more, primitive, like a bear coming up to your house, it's probably not a good idea to feed a bear, out the back door
Right.
and have
Right.
it hanging around, because in the end, it's still an animal. So. Uh, I think our tendency is to give Bigfoot more, right or wrong, to give it more credit for being more human and more intellectual and having feelings and emotions and things similar to us. So, we can relate better to it. And that very well may be the case. And then, yeah, I think it's fine to feed it, And I think it would understand if you didn't feed it one day, it's not going to just rip your head off and, drink your blood because you didn't give it a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I had yesterday. I don't know. But if it's if it's more like an ape, then yeah, bad idea. You hear all the time about how chimps turn on people and rip off an arm after so many years or something, but
Rip their face off, right?
yeah, so I guess my advice would be contingent on knowing a little bit more about its attitude.
So let me ask you this, because as we're starting to wrap up here, because speaking of invasive, the one thing that to me seems invasive is when people go in Bigfoot investigations. And you were talking earlier about whether it's ape or transdimensional uh, type creature, and there are things like the Sierra sound. So you hear
Mhm.
things like samurai chatter, things like that, or you woodknocks, and you hear people go out into the woods and they try to ape those things, or they might play a recording of that, or they start knocking on trees, things like that. In my view, this is only my view. It would be like someone coming into my neighborhood and trying to ape my speech and maybe saying the wrong thing. So
Right.
what if they came into my neighborhood shouting "fuck you"
Right.
and not knowing what they were saying, right?
Yeah.
Um, are we right to go in and do stuff like this? I mean, killing
Probably
dogs.
not. Maybe some of the knocking, some of the stuff, I guess, the more information you have, it's like dolphins, we think we know some of their calls, or some of the noises they make. This means that, or this means whatever. But so, just like you're saying, if I went, I was going to go try to sell my books in, China, and I just went over there and started trying to talk Chinese because I heard it sounded like this. I would make no sense at all. Right? I would just be I'm not going to do a Chinese, attempt at an accent because I don't want to, but you know what I'm saying? Like if I start talking Spanish, I don't know how to speak Spanish very well. I might get two or three words right from my old high school classes, but the rest of it's going to be just BS that I'm making up, so probably the same way our dogs look at us when we're like, barking at them or whatever, and woof, woof,
Yeah.
woof, and they're like, "What are you talking about? What is this guy doing?" So yeah, it's probably not a great idea to try to mimic, at least not to mimic speech and the whistling or the howling, because it probably is very specific meanings, and you could definitely say the wrong thing or just be so obvious that you're not a Bigfoot, right? That they're not going to come anywhere
Right.
near you. It's like, what's that gibberish over there? I'm not going over there. Some of the wood knocking and things like that that seem a little bit less specific, as far as like a communication maybe is okay, but I think we're making a lot of assumptions when we try to do calls or things like that with a creature that you know, we don't speak their language. So
Because I guess from the book, the example of the man who's doing the wood knocks, he decides, oh, I'm going to try it. And then the thing starts getting closer and he's surprised that it's getting closer. Well,
right.
why
My
wouldn't
dog
he? I
barking in
mean,
the background.
you're calling it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you think it's going to get closer?
Right. Yeah, you might be asking it to fight. You don't know. Like,
Yeah, right.
because my dog hears us talking about animals. I can hear barking in the other
Oh
room.
yeah, he's like Bigfoot. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no Bigfoot, right? Yeah, the dog's probably like, I don't want Bigfoot to come around. What are you talking about? Or just dogs communicating. It's probably like dogs communicating. Where's the dogs?
Right.
Right. Um, lastly, let me ask you about this. Have you yourself been out there? Have you gone out on an investigation, tried to find
I've
things?
done not very good investigations, I'll say. Kind of, you know, um, we were down in Kentucky, well, Ohio, southern Ohio, northern Kentucky, Hocking Hills area, Appalachia there, and a lot of sightings and whatnot. And we were out, hiking some of the area. We're in an area that's pretty populated. You're probably not going to stumble across something. You're kind of looking around. Oh yeah, they said there was a Bigfoot sighting here once, or whatever, and so my investigations have been poor, I'd say. I'd like to do more. I'd be interested in exploring that a bit, but also, I don't know that I want to I'm not much of a camper anyway, so I don't know that I would want to go spend a week out in, the Pacific Northwest or something. Now, during the research of the book, I was surprised at how many sightings and activity happens in the Midwest and in Michigan, where I'm at. It's like it was, I don't know, up in the top 10 of, locations around the country, states, that had Bigfoot sightings, like 200 and something, almost 300 sightings, I think, documented by the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, on their site. Great site, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was like, oh wow, I should probably be looking around the house a bit more, maybe, go up to
Yeah.
UP, and so I might do some local investigations, but I haven't done any. any real serious, spending time out in the woods as long as, people might have expected.
Right on. Well, you never know. I mean, I'm with you, and in fact, I know Eric Altman does a Bigfoot event every year. That's probably the best way to get your feet wet. Lauren Coleman's out there, and Stan Gordon and some other Bigfoot aficionados, and that's probably the easiest way. I mean,
Yeah.
plus if you really get tired of camping out, you can always go to the hotel.
You're
Do it.
right.
So that's the way I plan on getting my feet wet. So you could probably join me out there, Mike, because you get tired of it. There's always the hotel bar. So,
Right.
yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. Um, and then I guess lastly, I got to ask. Okay, so now that you've finished this book with Jim, what's next for Mike?
Well, so when I got into this book, I was on my way working through my ink, which is a broader kind of unexplained book where we'll cover a lot of different subjects, not so deeply researched or as expansive anyway as the ghost books or the Bigfoot book, but we'll do a little bit on aliens. We'll do some cryptids. We'll do some geographical triangles, all that kind of stuff. We're doing I think I'm working on the mediums and psychic chapter right now. We went down to Florida, the town down there, right? The big psychic Kozlowski, and hung out down there and, did some investigating. And I try to get to at least some of the places, as much as I can. Fortunately, I'm not independently wealthy, so I don't get to all of them. But yeah, so that should be coming out probably around this time next year is the plan, barring any delays. And then I'll probably work on, I think I'm going to take a little break from the unexplained genre, go back and do a little bit of fiction work for a while, just because it's a fun place to play around and give my brain a little bit of research rest. And then I'm sure writing the mysteries book will spark some interest in maybe, I might end up doing a bigger aliens book or something, something will come out of that book, I'm sure, point me in a direction or two.
Nice. It sounds very interesting. We'll have to have you back for that as well. That
Yeah,
sounds
I'd be happy to be here, sure.
Yeah, sounds like a good time. Well, the name of the book, folks, and I highly encourage you to go get it, is Bigfoot Sightings, True Tales from Across America. It's Jim Willis, along with our guest, Michael A. Kozlowski. Mike, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Thank you. Folks, a couple of reminders before we leave you today. One, if you are listening to the show on audio podcast and you want to watch the podcast, it's real simple. You just either A, go to YouTube and it's the original Darkness Radio on YouTube, or B, go to darknessradioshow.com. The video is right above the audio podcast. It's all in one location. So you just click on the video above the audio and it's right there for you. Two, we want to thank our executive producer for today's show, Troy Palmer. Thank you, Troy, for everything you do. Three, the Darkness Radio Apple app is available for you. If you don't have the Apple app for Darkness Radio on your Apple device, simply go download it at the store. If you already have it, it's the update's available for you right now. Go get the Apple update for that. And lastly, and certainly not leastly, that's not a word. Our partners over at Mysterious Adventures Tours have 2 trips for Halloween that we want you to get in and get involved with. First of all, Dacre Stoker is taking you to Romania for Halloween. You can party at Bran Castle, which was the inspiration for Bram Stoker to write Dracula and the inspiration for Dracula's Castle.
I've met Dacre, great guy.
Yeah, oh yeah, Dacre's a wonderful guy, and I'm telling you, that is a destination, a bucket destination for Halloween. So you can either party at Dracula's Castle the day of Halloween. There's that option for you, or I believe it's 12 days in Romania. That's the second package that's available for you. We have a link in the description of this podcast, so you can click on that link and check that out. The other one is Brian J. Cano in Ireland for Halloween. So the Puka Festival and much, much more. The place where it all started for Halloween. Man, talk about great trips, but you can check out either trip. So go check those out. Those links in the description of this podcast. And lastly,
Yeah, get this on while I see your twin shirt there. I gotta
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You get your Detroit Tigers out because you got my twin shirt right there. There you go. Our last battling, rivalry here. And lastly, folks, before we leave you today, I want to remind you that the Minnesota State Fair is going on. It's going to be a wonderful weekend. There's my Minnesota shot at you, Mike.
Nice.
I don't know about the Michigan State Fair.
Woodward Dream Cruise is this weekend, so it's a big, big company.
There you go. Well, either way, it's going to be a beautiful weekend. I'm going to remind you to take someone who is elderly or disabled out with you this weekend. By all means, folks, be a light in someone's darkness this weekend. Bring someone out with you. Show them a good time. Get a loved one, a neighbor, a friend, or just someone you know who's elderly or disabled out of the house this weekend. Show them a good time. It's a message from your friends here at Darkness Radio. For Beer City Bruiser, for Jessica Freeberg, for Mally Fox, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio.
For more audio and video archives of the show, intriguing content, fun events, and cool swag, check out darknessradioshow.com. The executive producer of Darkness Radio is Troy Palmer. If you enjoyed today's program, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and remember to go out and make a difference this weekend and be a light in someone's darkness.